Not filing your accounts on time comes with some very real consequences, and not all of them are obvious. Stay tuned and we'll break them down. Hi, Nick here from First Summations. So what actually happens if you miss your accounts deadline? Well, the short answer is you get an automatic financial penalty. There's no warning letter or grace period or anything like that. The fine kicks in the moment the deadline passes. And if things get left long enough, it gets much more serious. Companies House can forcibly close your company, and in the worst cases, the directors themselves can face criminal prosecution. It's not great. So let's get into the detail of this, starting with a quick bit of context that will help everything else make sense. First, what actually are the annual accounts? Every UK limited company, whether it's actively trading or completely dormant, is legally required to submit accounts to Companies House each year. Annual accounts are financial documents that summarise your company's position at the end of its financial year. Exactly what's included depends on your company's size. Smaller companies might only be submitting a balance sheet, whilst larger companies must provide a much more detailed picture. But why is all of this needed? Why is it compulsory? Well, the reason is what often used to be described as the deal. And this was it. When you set up a limited company, you get something incredibly valuable, limited liability. That means your personal assets, your home, your savings, your dog, they all gain protection if the company ever runs into financial trouble. It's a protection that makes the very act of going into business far less risky. In return for this, the government asks you to be transparent about your company. This includes things like telling Companies House who your directors are, or who owns your company, and where it's based. But the big one is filing annual accounts showing the financial status of your company. That's your side of the bargain in this deal. Now, when are the accounts actually due? For your very first set of accounts, the deadline is 21 months after the date your company was incorporated. But for every set of accounts after that, the default deadline is 9 months after your accounting reference date. The accounting reference date is just a fancy way of saying the last day of your company's financial year. By default, this date falls on the last day of the month in which your company was formed 1 year on. So, if your company was incorporated on the 9th of October 2026, your first accounting reference date would be the 31st of October 2027. If you're unsure about your specific dates, you can always just check them on the First Summations online company manager or by searching your company directly on the Companies House website. It'll all be listed there. And we'll leave a link to both of these in the description. So, those are the dates. Now let's talk about the penalties. Like we said, the moment your deadline passes, Companies House will apply an automatic fine. The size of the fine will depend on how late you end up filing your accounts. For a private limited company, accounts up to 1 month late incur a £150 fine. Accounts which are between 1 and 3 months late incur a £375 fine. Those which are between 3 and 6 months late receive a £750 fine, and companies that submit more than 6 months late get a £1,500 fine. Those are some pretty hefty figures, but it can get worse. If your accounts are late for a second year running, the fine doubles. So, if you are late for a second year and you eventually submit your accounts more than 6 months after the deadline, you'll be hit with a £3,000 fine. But it's not just fines that you have to worry about. There are 3 other serious consequences to consider. The first is compulsory strike-off. If the accounts aren't filed at all, Companies House will start the process of forcibly closing your company. This typically begins around a month after your deadline has passed. Once started, the compulsory strike-off process only takes about 2 months to conclude. And at the end of it, your company is dissolved and it ceases to exist. That means you can no longer trade under it, and any assets left inside the company are passed to the Crown. The second is direct prosecution. In other words, you could be personally prosecuted for your company not submitting its accounts. This one's a little less common, but it's a real possibility in the most serious of cases, so it's important that you know. There's also something that Companies House won't penalise you for directly, but it can still hurt you. And that is the reputational damage that you get from filing late. Late accounts are visible to anybody who looks, which includes your suppliers, your partners, and your lenders, to name a few. It doesn't look good on your part, and that kind of reputational damage can be hard to shake off, so you really shouldn't underestimate it. So those are the key consequences that you're looking at. But let's just say that you've already submitted your accounts late and now you've been fined. Can you appeal that fine? Well, you can, but the bar for success is very high. Companies House will only consider waiving a penalty if something exceptional happened that was completely beyond your control. Their own guidance cites an example like a fire destroying your financial records just days before the deadline. That's the sort of thing that we're talking about here. Forgetting the deadline, not knowing the rules, or your accountant being unwell, those won't cut it, unfortunately. If you do want to appeal, you can do this online. We'll drop a link to this appeal form in the description below as well. Now, just a quick note on dormant companies here. There's a common myth that dormant companies don't need to file accounts. They absolutely do. Dormant or not, the requirement and the penalties are exactly the same. The good news is that most dormant companies are eligible to submit what are called dormant company accounts. These are much simpler and require far less paperwork to prepare versus full accounts. To make things even easier, First Formations offers a dormant company account service where we'll prepare and file your accounts for you. And if you're up against the clock, there's an express option as well. The link to the service is also in the description. And lastly, if your company is heading towards its deadline and you know you won't be able to make it, here's a little bit of advice for you. You need to act fast. The priority here now is to submit the accounts as soon as you can. The sooner you do it, the better. You can also apply to Companies House for an extension of up to 3 months, although this needs to happen before your original deadline actually passes. Once that deadline has passed, you can't request an extension. So, to cap everything off, all UK limited companies must file annual accounts. There are no exceptions. Miss the deadline and you'll get an automatic fine. The later you leave it, the bigger the fine gets. File late 2 years running and those fines double. Appeals to fines are possible, but only in genuinely exceptional circumstances. Companies House can also forcibly close companies that haven't filed their accounts, and directors also risk prosecution. And dormant companies are not exempt from all of this, but most can file the simpler dormant accounts. If you found this video useful, please do give it a like and hit the subscribe button. It really does help the channel grow. And if you've got a question, drop it in the comment section below and we will get straight back to you. Thank you so much for watching and we'll see you next time. Cheerio.